What's up, guys? It's Brandon with Extreme Delivery Drivers. We are always balling on a budget and wrench in our garage. And we are back. Today we are going to install a wideband O2 sensor in the 3rd gen Prelude. So let's get started. Alright guys, so here is the AEM wideband that I purchased off Amazon. I'll put a link in the description below. So let me show you real quick what comes in the box. You get, of course, your gauge. You can change the face on this to white and put a silver bezel on it, or change it up any way you want. We're going to leave it black as it comes because that looks the coolest, and my gauges are black. So we're going to stick with black. And you get, of course, an O2 sensor, alright, with a little clip. And then you get some wiring here. This is going to give us our power, our ground. Everything is going to plug in the back of the gauge there. See those pinouts? And then finally you get the other half of the pinout, the little white cap right there. And then this is going to go to here, going directly to the O2 sensor. So I also got this gauge pod here. This isn't from Autometer. I also got this on Amazon. I think it was like $22 or something like that. It's real solid, all metal. We're going to figure out where we're going to mount this. I'm not sure exactly where it's going to go yet, but we'll get creative with this. Gauge just sits in there, pretty straightforward. And then lastly, I got these vampire clips. Did not need all these colors. All I need is red, but whatever. That's all they had, so I had to get it. So the first thing you're going to want to do is disconnect the negative terminal on your battery. So we're going to get this guy off. Boom. Alright, so the O2 sensor is going to get its power, its ground, and that 5 volt, whatever that is, straight from the ECU. The ECU in this car is here in the footwell. So I got to pull some carpet to get to it, but after we pull a couple bolts, we should be able to unbolt it from the firewall. Alright, so here's the ECU. Right here my finger is. That's a little window that blinks trouble codes if you have a check engine light on. But it looks like I got to remove this little kick plate here. We got a couple 10mm screws, 4 of those removed, and I should be able to get to that ECU. Here's the back side of the plate. Looks like we got a couple more bolts, and then we can get that computer off of there. And then we got to unclip the wiring there. Alright, check it out. ECU, pinouts, PK3. I think that's the name of this ECU. I'm not 100% sure, but anyway, there you have it. So I found this little walkthrough on the internet about how to install a wideband O2 sensor for an OBD1 ECU, and it talks about the best way to give it power. So let's scroll up right here, and it shows you the breakdowns of the ECU pinouts and where to connect. So you're going to connect your wideband voltage to there, 825, connect your wideband ground to 826, and then on the ECU connector D, we're going to go to D14. That's what those vampire clips are for. So we're going to start with that wiring, get that done, and then we're going to worry about mounting the gauge and everything else. So I probably should have said that in the beginning, but whatever. Alright, once again, here is the wiring harness. I'd say it's about 3 feet long, which will be plenty of room for us to get basically from this area over towards where the steering wheel is, or the A-pillar or whatever, obviously all underneath the dash. So these are the wires we're going to be splicing in to the wiring harness leading to the ECU. Alright guys, I did some splicing with the vampire taps, and I know that soldering is the way to go. I know it's so much better. You don't have to comment that I should solder. I know I should solder. I'm terrible at it, and I'm really bad, especially in like close quarters, you know, kind of like under the dashboard like we got going on here. But anyway, using the directions that came with the wideband, identified a power wire, red, negative wire, black. There's also a white wire and a blue wire. We're gonna get to that in a second, but to make sure everything works, I went ahead and spliced into the ECU wiring, as you see here. So yellow and black is going to be power, and black and red is going to be our negative. So To make sure that everything works, I just have it plugged in the back of here. We will turn on, give it some battery, and then boom, we got power. So the last line that I'm going to hook up is this guy, and this is going to wire into the O2 sensor right here in the ECU. So we're going to splice into the O2 sensor real quick, and then we'll be done with our splicing. Alright, for now I folded the carpet over and I fed the wire over to the driver's side. So here it is on the driver's side around the center console, and now we got to figure out where we're going to mount the gauge itself. Alright, so inside the cockpit now, and this is where I'm thinking we're going to put it. That's what I like about this location, is the wire can actually be tucked down in here and around and hidden, because we're going to have two wires, one coming from the O2 sensor itself and the other one coming from the power of the ECU. So I'm going to have two wires coming up, and I like the idea of it being here because the wires can just go right into there and I don't have to do anything special to hide the wires themselves. The only thing I don't like about this location is I'm going to have to damage, when I say damage, I'm going to put two screws in here, this plastic cover, which, 91 Prelude, these things don't grow on trees. So I really need to like its location for me to drill holes into this. Another location, there are really a million locations. It can go anywhere. I mean, you can get as bold as this. You can do something like that. You can go crazy. You can put this thing anywhere you want, really. So you could do. That's kind of what I like about this mount, is that I can actually mount it upside down, something like that. I mean, obviously the gauge would swivel. The only problem with it there is my line of sight. I don't see that. Initially, I thought maybe here. That's not the worst place in the world, because when my feet are in the car and I'm driving, like, I can see that out of my eye. So not the worst location, and then obviously hiding the wire is super easy. Last option right here is another option, if you could figure out a place to put it here. Even like this, not a bad deal. Obviously the gauge would swivel inside the casing, so I'm not looking at it sideways, it would be straight on, but the curve of the dash, see how the dash is curved there, and this has a curve to it, would make that pretty nice. I like the way it looks there too for the flow of the gauges. It looks good there. And then there's also the A-pillar mount, the traditional A-pillar mount, which you can do as well. So one of the reasons I got this particular mount from Amazon was that there is a lot of flexibility, and I didn't know where I'm going to put this. Quite honestly, I still don't know where. I think it's going to go here. I think this is just the best, easiest spot for installation. So I think that's what we're going to do. Alright, so while I contemplate gauge location, I think I know where I'm going, but while we figure that out, we need to be able to get the O2 sensor wire into the engine bay. Okay, so to give you guys a better idea, alright, right here, this is the connector to the O2 sensor, and if you look hard, you can actually see the O2 sensor, the NGK one plugged into the factory connection. So essentially what we're going to do is we're going to remove that O2 sensor. We're going to unclip this, and the O2 sensor is going to be plugging in directly into our gauge and no longer into the computer via this cord. So we need to be able to run the wire from the gauge through the firewall down to the O2 sensor. So I have a lot of stupid things, heater core, air conditioning, or that's air conditioning, that's heater core, I can't remember which one's which. That all stuff, that needs to come out at some point, but they are clogging up my potential holes to run it. But if we come over here to the other side, there's a little grommet right here. See that guy? And it is right next to the steering wheel, the rack and pinion connection there, whatever it's called. So I think we can come through that. So we go on the inside of the car, and we go underneath here, and if you look, you see that cutout right there? I'm going to remove that piece of foam. Bear with me a minute here. I only got 2 hands. But if I remove this piece of foam, alright, there is a grommet there. So we're going to poke a hole in that grommet, and that's going to be where our O2 sensor is going to go through. Alright, so they give you a ton of wire. I mean, a ridiculous amount. This again is going to go through the firewall to the O2 sensor, and this end is going to go to the gauge. And they give you like 35 feet of this wire for whatever reason. We aren't going to bring all this through the firewall. We're going to do just as much as we need, and then we'll coil this up underneath the dash and tuck it away. But before I send that through, let me show you what I did. Gives you just again a better idea of the location. So here you can see the flashlight shining a light through that hole, and again here's the grommet that I just picked off. So there's already a little hole in this. Looks like somebody tried to use it at one point, but we're going to cut an X in this, and we'll run the wire through this, so it's nice and sealed when it's back in its home. So I only need, look, you can see the O2 sensor straight down there. I only need like, geez, like 2 inches of wire to come through there. Everything else will be coiled up under the dash. All right, that actually worked out pretty well. You can see here, boom. And this, I'll put a little silicone on that little rubber boot too. And then in here, so yeah, right here we got more than enough cable. I could mount this cage in the trunk if I wanted to. All right, so we're done for under here for right now. So I'm just gonna zip tie this thing out of the way somewhere, and then close the hood. Well, there you have it, guys. Installed, wires tucked. You can see that minimal wires are showing. I think the install went pretty darn well. Of course, ran into a few hiccups here and there, but nothing crazy. Let's start it and check it out. It works. So right now it's not reading anything because, if you remember, we installed that wire in the engine bay and zip tied it up, and here is the O2 sensor. So you don't want to install this right now because the stock ECU would be completely confused, because basically we'd be disconnecting the O2 sensor from the stock ECU, hooking this up, and the stock ECU is not going to be able to read this. So we're going to wait till we get to the tuner, and when we get there we're going to go into the car, back this nut out, pull out the original O2 sensor, and then we're going to install this one and hook this to the line that we ran into the engine bay. So that'll be the next video. I hope you enjoyed this one. Thank you so much for watching. Next video, we're getting this thing dyno tuned. It's going to be awesome. I'll see you next time, guys. Take care.